Hey folks, Vince the Evil DM here. I'm back with a new addition to my channel called Too Long Didn't Listen. And this is going to be basically a bi-weekly recap, maybe weekly. I'm not sure because my game is bi-weekly. It's going to be a recap of my Palladium fantasy game that I do for RollHigherDie.com. You can listen to the full episode there when I produce it under the Palladium Megaverse podcast. I'll include a link down below so you can listen to the previous seasons, which was Dead Rain and then Heroes Unlimited Basic. But this season, the third season, is Palladium Fantasy 1E. We kicked off the adventure this weekend in 2 pieces. So I'm going to just do a recap of what that is for those out there that really are interested in the campaign, but they're not really interested in listening to an actual play because not everybody likes listening to actual plays, and I don't blame them really, because some of them really aren't that good. And just getting a kind of a recap as someone talking to you about the story of how their campaign worked, and maybe from a DM side giving you little notes, is somewhat interesting to me. I figured I would do this as a test, and if nobody likes it, then I don't have to do it again. If people enjoy it, they could thumbs up the video and say this was cool, keep it going, and I will do it every time we have our session, which is obviously bi-weekly, so I could probably split these up into 2 videos, depending on how the length is. This one will be a little bit longer because I'm just kicking things off. But I can really get into some details about it, show a little bit of the maps, my awful drawings, things like that. So the group basically consists of... we have Jeff, who is playing a knight. We have Steven, who is playing an elven character named Saren. We have Corey, who is playing Nova, who is a summoner. And we have Rick, who's playing Lord Torval, which is basically the noble class in Palladium Fantasy, so the straight-up noble. And we have Lauren playing the warlock class. Now, the characters got off to a little bit of a slow... The session got off to a little bit of a slow start because we had to get the awkward, situation out of the way of a game moving forward. So I had to, fast forward things just a little bit. But the story was as it was, and let me get you over to a little bit of a map here. The group traveled across the sea to head over to the grassland colonies, heading to Naskadag, which is run by the House of Miyajina in the Opiate Grasslands. This is a new empire this is a new colony being expanded. The Western Empire is moving forward into the grasslands and trying to colonize it slowly but surely. They have successfully done 1 city, and the second city is where the group was heading to right now to help out, to the Guild of Heroes in this little town. This little town had a feeling of moving in, construction work heading up. When they got into town, they smelt sawdust, and they saw buildings being put up. So it really wasn't a well-established town yet. This is a new area they charted out to. This was the first major town after the city in this area that was built. So when they moved over, they needed adventurers. The Empire put a big call out to everybody in the Western Empire, calling all heroes to the Heroes Guild. We want adventurers to come over here and clear the area out for us. That is the basis for this entire adventure, this entire campaign for now, in the beginning, is the heroes or the party will head over to this city into, I have a little bit of a map here, and I'll show you that map of the city. This is the basic city layout that I use for the game. The circle area is where the group went to meet up at the Guild of Heroes, and they had to meet up with attendant Alora, who gave them a quick orientation around the place and give them the perks of the guild itself. Yes, I absolutely ripped off the guild idea from Goblin Slayer. I thought it was an awesome idea for a base hub area. I like hub areas that can give out missions or little mini adventures to a group while they're moving along. I like that they can come back to a place, have a place to stay. They had free room and board. They had, acquisition to supplies. I also went as far as giving them certain ranks as well. The guild ranks are much like the ones that you saw in Goblin Slayer, but they also have perks. They have 8 ranks, as opposed, I think Goblin Slayer had like 10 or 12, but there were 8 ranks, and each of them gave them certain perks and abilities inside the guild hall. The lower the rank, because you start at rank 8 and move your way down, the lower the rank, the more things you have access to inside the guild. Like you wouldn't get access to a library until later on. You wouldn't get access to certain training facilities until later on. When you're a beginning hero, you basically have whatever you have on you. You can have a few supplies here and there, maybe a horse, some food, and then you have to go out and venturing out and prove yourself. The more you prove yourself, the more worth you get inside the guild, and the more they will start handing over to you, saying, "Wow, okay, this is a guy we can invest in. This is a gal we can invest in. Let's give them what they need to help further our cause." So the group, after a little bit of walking around and talking to Alora, got their orientation of the place, got told about the ranks. They have little badges that they would have, but they don't get those yet because they're just starting out. A beginner hero has to prove themselves to the guild, and that's what they're doing. They got their first mission to head out. There was a new outpost that was established up to the north, and that we go back to this map, and this is where the red X is. They had to travel right here to this red X to check on the new outpost. The new outpost hasn't responded in a number of weeks to possibly over a month. They had sent other adventurers out, which have not returned. It is a 2 to 3 day travel for them. The group needed to get some furs and some heavy clothing because the further north they went, the more cold it got. They weren't sure exactly because they're new to this area. Most of the Western Empire folk are new to this area, so they weren't quite sure if it was snow season or just really cold. All they knew is it was just absolutely cold. So they told them to get some furs and bundle up and head out. They gave them a wagon so some of the people can travel with the group while some of the riders got on their horseback. So when they headed out the first day, the two fighters, or I should say knight and paladin, took the lead while the rest of the group kind of hung out on the cart. May I make a note here that the knight, who was played by Jeff, Lord Lee, has a servant with him, an assistant servant. Lord Torvald also has his own assistant. And Saren, who is a paladin who has the right to have nobility, does not have any of that involved. So the two, we're just going to call them men-at-arms for now, took the lead. The first day on traveling, they noticed that on the grassy lands, they noticed some centaurs had followed them. And they tried to approach them, but the centaurs did not approach them. So they just kind of stayed back and cautiously continued the path north towards the outpost, with the centaurs kind of following them, keeping an eye on them mysteriously. Saren had noted that they should not approach the centaurs and just continue along the way. Don't be aggressive. So the group continued along. They met some travelers along the way. These travelers, they asked questions about the centaurs, and they said absolutely. And they said absolutely, they would answer them. And these travelers had said that the centaurs were not very aggressive, but they did tend to scream things at them. They did not know what they meant, but they did repeat what they were, and only one player in the group was able to understand, and that was Saren, Steven's character, who happened to be an elf because they spoke Elven. The equivalent of what they said was, "Two-legged man, get off my land." But Saren did not exactly share that information with everybody. He just said that be careful and get off the land, get what you need, and get off very quickly. When the group continued further along, they had to camp for the night because it became dark and really cold. Upon their first night, the group found a little overhang area where they can stand on top for watch, and the rest of the people could sit below and comfortably sleep. That was about halfway, I would say, where they were at that point. When they camped for the night, they had their certain watches, and on the watch, various weird things had happened. Now, if I look at my notes here, Lord Lee and his servant had stayed up for the first watch, and they started noticing some suspicious things going on. And they could not figure out what was going on. So Lee had woken up Saren, and Saren had come up there. Lord Lee wanted Saren to scan the area due to him having some infravision, having the ability to see in the dark. So Saren started doing his thing, scanning the area, the three men standing there. And Saren decided that he may have seen something in one of the bushes. He saw something glinting off, so he decided to pretend to go back to sleep. When he got down to his tent, instead of going into his tent, he slipped around, rolling a prowl, and then jumping inside the wooded area to sneak around to that area where he found something. Upon approaching the glinted arrow, so to speak, he saw that it was an arrow placed plainly on the bush. Thinking back to stories, he did a kind of a historical role here. Thinking back to stories that his grandmother had told him about ambushes and things, and centaurs, and just mythology, he remembered that this was a typical way for centaurs to lure people into a trap, get them to come down here to figure out what's going on, and then pounce. Just as he figured that out, that memory triggered in his mind, he turned around to see a centaur male swinging a club at him. Luckily, he rolled to parry that with his shield, blocking that. Then they exchanged a few words. The centaur had stopped, wondering in amazement that someone was able to speak his language, because usually there are humans in this area, or orcs or goblins. So he spoke to him and found out that Saren was someone to be trusted, a man of good faith. Saren asked him what is the issue here, and he told him that the centaur folk did not like all these new people approaching or encroaching upon their land. So he wanted them to leave. He said that they're basically pillaging the lands, so to speak. He does not like it. Saren promised that they wanted safe passage to the outpost that they were traveling to, and that they would not affect the land whatsoever. They were just on a peaceful mission to find out what happened to their folk. And the centaur had said that the outpost was overrun by orcs and goblins working together, which made Saren a little bit puzzled as he raised his eyebrows. Orcs and goblins working together, and he said yes. The centaur had then just rode away after that, leaving him with that thought in his head. The rest of the group had decided the rest of the night was uneventful as Saren went back and spoke to Lord Lee about this information that he recovered, and then he shared the rest of the information with the group the next morning if they started packing up camp. The group decided to travel almost all the way to the outpost, where they would regroup and decide to figure out a plan how to approach the outpost. The outpost did have a clear road to it, but it was still nighttime at this point because now they're on the second night right outside the outpost. And based on mythology and lore that they knew, that goblins and orcs were more active during night, so they decided to find a way to get there during the daytime, assuring that they would have a disadvantage, the goblins and orcs, because of the daytime. They would not be able to see as far and be hampered by the sunlight. So the group decided that they were going to camp for the night and get an early start in the morning. So the group had approached the outpost in the morning time. So they approached the outpost in the morning time, and here's the really crappy map because I can't draw whatsoever, but it served its purpose, and here are the notes of everybody attacking and everything. The plan was, while there were some people guarding the front and around the sides, the group was going to sneak around the side over here in the foresty area and lure one of the guards into the forest by using the same trick the centaurs used, which, why not? They did, and lured that lonely orc into there and ambushed him. When they saw the coast was clear, the group decided to go to the outpost and scale the wall, and then slowly take out the little groups of goblins sleeping under, and orcs, they're mixed, sleeping under the tree. When the battle was starting to wind down and the group was looking at a clear victory, one of the goblins, no, I'm sorry, it was an orc. One of the orcs pulled out a horn and blew a horn that made a loud sound. And out of this giant hut right here came a 15-foot tall orc, stomping with a giant hammer in his hands as the group had to deal with this giant creature that looked like an oversized orc to them. After a roundabout battle of the group missing, hitting, and not really doing much to him at first, they finally defeated him and he fell to his knees and died. The group then scoured the rest of the area and found the outpost people hidden inside of these huts, tied up, beaten, and hungry. They had saved the day, they've saved the outpost, and that's where the adventure ended. So tell me what you think about this, folks. I know it was a 15-minute recap because I had to do the beginning start of what things were. Would you like to see more of these things, more of these recaps? I think everybody had a great time in this adventure. It was a simple, straightforward adventure of go point A, figure out what's going on, clean up, and come back. Now the adventure ended when they, got there. They cleaned up the adventure. Now they have to head back and see what happens from there. Hopefully all the players had a great time, which pretty much that's the feedback I got from everybody. They had a great time. Now this will be available to listen to in full and detail, broken into 2 episodes of about an hour apiece, right at rollhighordie.com, and I'll add those links below. Well, I'm going to head out. I think I've spoken enough for today. I want to keep this into that 10 to 15 minute range. Hopefully the ones in the future will be a lot shorter because I'm not going to recap everything in the beginning like that. I was just the first video. So with that said, keep original, keep it old school, and good night, everybody.